Okay, everyone, my clock is reading 11 o'clock, so I think it's time for us to get started. If you can't hear me at any time, or if you experience any difficulty with the PowerPoint or you can't see, please let us know and we'll try to help you out and fix it. So hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our webinar today. My name is Summer, and I'm going to be presenting this webinar along with Giovani Lopez, our training manager. Thank you, Giovani, for being here with us.
No, thank you, Summer, for having me here today.
So everyone, stick around to see the excellent demo of ProcessMaker 322 that Giovani has prepared.
Yeah, it's excellent. Okay, Summer, so I think we're ready to get started here.
So this is our agenda for the next half hour or so. First, we'll start with ProcessMaker basics. From there, I'll give you a brief introduction of two of the biggest features in 322, Web Entry 2.0 and multiple file versioning. After that, Giovani will present his demo of 322, and then finally, you'll have the chance to submit your own questions about ProcessMaker 322 for Giovani to answer. So some of ProcessMaker's key features include an intuitive drag-and-drop interface, which makes it easy to model approval-based workflows. So process elements can be simply dragged and dropped from the Shapes toolbar onto the process map to create process models in minutes. ProcessMaker is also aligned with the requirements of most business processes. So that means that ProcessMaker uses BPMN 2.0 so that the process elements available can be used to represent almost any type of workflow on the process map. ProcessMaker also ensures end-to-end compliance, which means that business processes can be designed to comply with any set of regulations that apply. So here it says users can easily complete forms that drive processes with automated notifications via a web-based interface, online or offline, on multiple devices. So that means that ProcessMaker features dynamic forms that can be created in minutes to suit any purpose, and that can be filled out anonymously through email or providing a link. Forms are also responsive, and that means that they can be viewed on any screen. Managers have easy access to KPIs and metrics to make informed decisions. So ProcessMaker automatically calculates employee and process efficiency, which both can be easily accessed from the dashboard that you can see here in this picture. ProcessMaker also uses data reporting tools to make informative reports and graphs at the click of a button. So users can create a variety of graphs with data from report tables in ProcessMaker. So using ProcessMaker, managers can continuously improve performance by discovering bottlenecks and inefficiencies that delay the application process and result in rework. So once any inefficiencies are found, process designers can go back to the process map and immediately make any necessary changes. So now let me talk a little bit about two of the most anticipated features of the 3.322, Web Entry 2.0 and multiple file versioning. So for those of you who aren't familiar with web entries in general, the previous version of our web entry feature only allowed external users to fill out Dynaforms to start cases. Web entries are one of our most popular features and allow users outside of ProcessMaker to submit college applications, order items, schedule consultations, and other types of applications to ProcessMaker for review. All the end users need to do is click on a link to navigate to the Dynaform and begin filling it out. So in our new version of Web Entry 2.0, users can fill out more than just Dynaforms. They can create web entries that can include triggers, multiple Dynaforms, input and output documents, and external steps. So these steps add a lot of possibility to your web entries. For example, you can now autofill fields on Dynaforms before it's filled out by an external user, and send information back to your database using triggers. And users can now also complete external steps that you've customized using your own plugin, or download an output document generated with information from the Dyna form the end user filled out. So even though the new multiple file uploader versioning looks pretty simple, and it is simple to use, it's also a much anticipated feature that came with 3.2.2. So as applied by the name, the multiple file control also allows end users to not only upload multiple files to a Dyna form, it also allows end users to upload multiple versions of each file that was uploaded. So versions can be viewed, downloaded, or deleted after being uploaded with just a click of a button. So before we get started with the demo, I'd like to make a brief introduction of Giovani, the training manager here at ProcessMaker. So some of you might recognize him from previous webinars or even your own training sessions. So now, as you can see on this slide, Giovani is from Bolivia. Recently, Giovani made a trip to the ProcessMaker office in the United States. So Giovani, what was the biggest culture shock you experienced when you first arrived?
Well, okay, so now everybody knows that I'm from La Paz, Bolivia, and that was a great trip. Now the biggest culture shock, well, you know, I have been living by myself since I was 17, 18, so having roommates was definitely something shocking new for me. But anyway, they ended up being really nice people, and I'll always be thankful for having been able to live with them for a while.
Wow, that sounds like an interesting experience, especially being on your own in a foreign country. So when you were there, what was the thing you liked the most?
Well, it was great to work with the US team, and I met a lot of great people, made a lot of friends, but what I liked the most was definitely the food. I used to go to this deli right at the corner of our offices just to get a pastrami sandwich called Super Reuben. That was the Super Reuben. That was just great. I'll miss that sandwich forever.
If you can't tell, I'm from the U.S. I've actually never had that sandwich, so maybe Giovani can teach me a few things. So going off of that, what was the thing you liked the least about this state?
Wow, that's a tricky question. So, oh, the cold. Yeah, definitely the cold. You know that in La Paz, we don't really experience the change of seasons. I mean, it's either the rainy season or the dry season, and that's it. So actually, well, the picture that you have on your screen right now, I took that picture in Washington, near to the New Year's Eve. The brief moment that I was able to survive without a scarf covering my face. But I loved it anyway. It was a really great experience.
Okay, thanks, Giovani, for sharing with us some of your experiences in the U.S. So now I'm going to hand it over to Giovani for the 3.2.2 demo.
Okay, so thanks for letting me share my really touching story in the U.S.
Yeah, it was just very touching.
Okay, so I have prepared this virtual machine that you can see on your screen right now. Let me just make it work. So I have the latest version of ProcessMaker installed here. This is ProcessMaker 3.2.2, and I'm pretty sure I have already lost my session. So let me just log in again here before we get started with the new features that you will be able to find in this new version. Okay, so let me talk to you just a little bit about the new web entry tool, because we're going to have a complete webinar about this new feature. So make sure that you sign up for that one as well.
Giovani, before you get started with Web Entry 2.0, can you explain this process to us just a little bit?
Sure. Well, this is just a vendor registration process. I'm sure that I have used this process in the past just because of its simplicity. So basically, we receive the company details from a vendor that wants to be registered in our vendors database. So we receive all of his company details. Then we have an internal supervisor review this registration form form, and in case this information is accepted, then we update our vendors database, and that's basically what this process is about.
So the vendor is going to be using a web entry to submit their company details to this process.
Right. That's the magic of web entries, you know, because these people that are trying to submit their company details, those are not really your vendors yet, right? Those are kind of prospects. I mean, people that you will probably work with. So if in case you don't count with a web entry, you can imagine the process you will have to follow. I mean, you will have to send an email to all of your potential vendors and tell them, well, we work with ProcessMaker, so you can come to our offices and we will show you how to use ProcessMaker, how to create a case, and that will be really messed up, right?
Yeah, sounds really inconvenient to say the least.
Right. So that's why our users love the web entries. So this is basically what you need to do here. You can see this start event. So you just need to configure a web entry, and that's actually like a public Dynaform that you can use. And this is going to generate a public link that you can share via email, via chat. You can even send an email telling all of your potential vendors, just take a couple of minutes to fill out this form, and we will consider registering you as our vendor.
And Giovani, web entry is one of our most popular features. So how have users been using web entries in their own business processes besides registering vendors?
Well, as a public Dynaform, so for example, if you used to have, let me go to this example related to a financial institution, for example, if you have a process to request for a credit card, so this is just a credit card application process. You can have it fully automated. You can have all of your forms ready to be used. But if you will have to, again, have all of your potential customers come to the bank and just create a user for each of them and explain them how to create a new case in ProcessMaker, then, well, that won't work, right? That won't fly.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can use the web entry just to generate this public link that you can share with them. And again, just send them an email telling fill out this 5-minute form to receive your credit card application or something like that.
Yeah, sounds great. And I also did a training for a school recently. So one of the things you can do is maybe use these to create university applications. Really, the uses are endless for web entries, whatever you can think of.
Right. And your external users are going to be the most, well, they're going to get the most benefit out of it, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so as you have heard right now, web entries are already a great feature to have in ProcessMaker, but there were some limitations related to it. So, for example, it was just a Dynaform. You weren't able to use multiple steps there. You weren't able to execute triggers there, for example. But now you can see that you can configure this web entry as working with any other regular task.
So like you just said, we can add triggers to the web entry. So can they be added before the Dynaform as well?
Yes. So for example, if we would like to use this vendor registration form, right? And maybe we can take a look at it. So this is just a vendor registration form. So, for example, you can see that we have all of the vendors information here, including the company name and the email address. You could use a trigger in order to pre-fill out this information. So let me include this trigger here. Let me just expand this thing, and we can include a trigger like this one here. So you can see that I'm pre-establishing the company name and the email that I'm going to use. Okay, maybe a common example here is that in the Dynaform, for example, that I just showed you, you saw that we're including the current date and the current time for that dynaform, right? So we get this question a lot while we're delivering training sessions. So we get the request for pre-filling out these two fields, the current time and the current date. So basically, you should be able to do something like this. Okay, so basically, we're going to take these two ProcessMaker variables and use a ProcessMaker function in order to fill them out. In case you don't remember the name of the specific function that you would like to use, you can always get the function list pressing Ctrl plus space, right? So there you go. So for example, I need to get the current date and then the current time. And that's it. Let me save this trigger.
Parentheses.
Oh, I forgot the parentheses. Let me say it again. All right. Okay, let me save this trigger. And we can try right away this web entry. But let me show you the other options that we have here. We have already configured the steps that we would like to use. Actually, we're just using this dynaform, but as you can see, I can also include an input document here. So you can see the product catalog input document. So in this case, we will have our vendors fill out this form and also upload their product catalogs here. Okay, let me see what other configuration we can do here. We can see the properties. Oh, and this is really important. You can see that now we can even define the title that we're going to have for this web entry, right? And about the authentication, well, since now we're going to be working with external users, we can leave it as anonymous. But in case you will share this link with your ProcessMaker users, you can require them to log in before accessing this dynaform.
And Giovani, before 2.0, we only had the anonymous option, right?
That's right. That's right. And something really useful for this is that you can also select either if you would like to redirect your users to the predefined response page, you know, that little information box that tells you, well, a case has been created, thanks for submitting your information. But now you can even define a custom URL to redirect your users. So in case you would like to redirect them to, I don't know, a thank you page on your website, you can do that as well here. So for now, let me just use the anonymous option here with the predefined response page. We're going to go through these options in more detail during our next webinar.
And when is that webinar, Giovani?
That's scheduled for May the 30th.
Great.
Yeah, you should be able to find that published on our website. Okay, so you can see that I have plenty of options to configure this web entry now, and maybe we can take a look at the link options as well. This is the generic option that we have been using until this version. Just generating a link using the workspace default values like the skin and the language that you can see right here, right? That's part of the ProcessMaker URL. But now you can select a different skin. For example, if you use a different skin for your developers, a different one for your customers, then you should be able to establish that information here. Just enabling the advanced link generation option, then you have all of these options here. So as I was telling you, you can prepare yourself to review in more detail of all of these functions during our next webinar. So let me just generate a link here, and we can test this web entry right away. Okay, you can see the title that I defined for this web entry, get registered as our vendor. Oh, this is really cool, right?
Yeah, exactly. We get this question all the time, so this is a really useful feature to be able to autofill in web entries with the current date and time using a trigger that is set off to go before the Dynaform.
Right, and also taking into account that how powerful our triggers are, right? You can execute database queries there. You can query the REST API there, execute an external service. So
yeah, you can really do a lot if you know a little bit of PHP for the triggers.
Right. Okay, so this is just the public Dynaform that I'm using, and you can also see that I'm also working with an input document here. So you have a complete task here to be completed using the web entry.
So Giovani, there's something special about this Dynaform. Can you tell us what it is?
Yeah. Great that you noticed it. Basically, this is another new feature. This is something you mentioned during your slides, right? Mm-hmm. The multiple file uploader field that we use for this kind of Dynaform. So this field is available from ProcessMaker 3.1, if I'm not mistaken. But basically, this is just a Dynaform field that will allow you to upload multiple files at the same time. So, for example, I can upload these two, my main catalog and the special offers file. So there you go. You can see the process of the uploading. You can download these files. And this is the new thing that this version comes with. This is just an option to upload a new version of any of the documents that you're using here. So for example, if I would like to replace the main catalog with this top sellers PDF document, then you should be able to work with different versions of it.
Now, Giovani, is there a limit on the number of files that you can upload using this web control?
No, not really. There isn't such thing as a limit for the number of documents that you can upload here.
And is there a limit on the number of versions of each document that you can upload?
What's up with you and limits today? No, there isn't a limit for version.
Okay, that's great.
Okay, so basically this is the new option that you have. But, well, before we continue to the next feature, maybe something really important about this, let me go back to my process design, is that we were using the vendor registration form. Let me show you just how this field has been configured. Okay, so this is the field that we're using right now. This is the web control that we're using, the file upload one. Mm-hmm. So if you can take a look at the properties that I have here, you can see that this field has been related to an input document, right? So you can see that I'm using the product catalog input document. So we're retrieving some of the configuration that we have for that input document. So for example, we're getting the max file size, the size unit, and also the versioning.
And Giovani, if you go back up to the web controls, you'll find that we have the file web control as well.
Right.
How is the multiple file uploader different from this file control?
Well, those are two really different web controls. Actually, in the community version of ProcessMaker, you only count with this one, right?
With only the file web control.
Exactly. So the difference will be related to you cannot upload multiple files at the same time. You cannot see the uploading process. You won't be able to work with different versions of each of your documents, and so they are really different.
So basically, the file web control just uploads a single document.
That's it.
Okay.
That's the file web control that you already know.
Okay, thanks, Giovani.
Okay, so basically, I was telling you that something really important about the configuration that you're going to have for this web control is that you should make sure that you're enabling versioning for the input document that you're going to relate to this web control. So I'm using the product catalog input document, and you can see that all of the magic happens here. So you just need to enable versioning for your input document, and then you're going to have versioning enabled also for your multiple file uploader web control. Okay, so those may be the most important changes that come with this version, but there are also some small improvements that I would like to share with you today. So, for example, the property that allows you to define a customized error message for your Dynaforms. Let me show you that one as well using this Dynaform. So, for example, you can see that we have this as a required field, right? Because if you're trying to register a new vendor, of course, you will want to know the company name. So this has been marked as a required field. You can see it right here. But now there, you'll count with this new property right here, which will allow you to define a customized error message. So, for example, if we leave it blank, and maybe we can go to the preview mode for this Dynaform. So this is the functionality that you already know. Whenever you're trying to submit a Dynaform that includes a required field, you'll get this error message. This field is required.
And if I'm the end user filling out this Dynaform, this isn't very specific. I won't know the problem exactly.
Right, right. That's right. And also if you're working with a Dynaform on a different language, right? You will always get this message in English, and it's always going to be the default message that you can see here. But now you can customize it, just selecting this field and filling out this text box right here. So, for example, we can have something like, you must provide your company name. Okay, sorry, I'm not really creative with this kind of messages, but let's try it out. So we can try to submit this Dynaform right here, and you'll get this customized message.
Yeah, so even though that explanation isn't very creative, if I'm the end user, now I'll know how to fix my problem so I can submit the Dynaform.
Right, right, that's right. Okay, let me see what else I can show you about this new version. So maybe we can start talking about exclusive gateways. Let me show you what has changed in that regard. Okay, let me just create a new test process here. Well, I have lost my session. Let me log in again. And we're gonna create a new process here. So basically, you know that following the best practices that come with the BPMN 2.0 standard, which is related to the notation that you use for your process models.
That's exactly related to the process elements you see in our shapes toolbar. Those come from a business process management notation, otherwise known as BPMN.
Right, right. So basically, in the past, whenever you will try to have a process workflow like this one, when you have this exclusive gateway and several outgoing flows like here. So basically, our process validator used to require you to also include a converging gateway for this one.
And Giovani, can you remind us of what the process validator is?
Yeah, of course. So you can see these little icons.
And it's telling us the activity must have an outgoing sequence flow.
Exactly. So basically, the process validator is trying to make sure that your design complies with the BPMN 2.0 standard before you run this process. So you will be able to identify potential errors in your process design. And maybe we can even see the validator right here.
So here it looks like there's a handy list of all the errors with our process map. So as you can see, because none of our tasks are connected to an outgoing flow, we're getting all of these little error messages in our validator.
Exactly. So right now, since it's not longer required to include also a converging gateway for this one, you will be able to have a process map like this one with several end events.
And so before, if we had done this, there would have been an error with the process validator.
Exactly. Or you will have to include a converging gateway here and just have just a single end event for the whole process. But now you can have multiple ones. Okay, maybe another useful scenario for this kind of feature is the loop structure that's required sometimes. So let me just design something really quick here just to exemplify what I'm talking about. So basically, if you used to have something like this, so maybe you were trying to generate a report, for example, and this was performed by an external service. So you will be using a service task. So basically, since this task is being performed by an external system, after some time, you would like to confirm that this action was taken care of, right? Mm-hmm. And in case there was something wrong with it, you would like to try again. And if everything went well, then you would like to continue to the next task. So you can see that, for example, in this kind of scenarios, you won't require a converging gateway for this one, right?
Great. And so Giovani, what type of situation is this gateway structure useful for?
Right. Well, that's basically what we have been reviewing here. So you need to make sure that this one's completed, right? This task was completed. So after some time, you're trying to actually validate that the report was generated. Mm-hmm. Maybe something like that. So if there was an error during that process, then you can go back to the previous task.
So basically, if there was an error while generating this report, then you can loop it back to that task to try again to generate the report.
Exactly. And you can even include an email message event here, just to notify your supervisor or somebody in your IT department that something's wrong with that process.
This is also a structure that's used a lot for when we use connectors in our process. In the case maybe the server is down on the other website, then you can just loop back to the task and maybe try to send documents or try to execute that connector again after a certain amount of time.
Right, that's right. So, and the great thing now is that our process validator will allow you to have a process workflow like this. Okay, let me continue with the next feature. That one is related to the advanced search. So you know that this feature is really useful in order to find your cases that you have participated in, or maybe cases assigned to other users. You can perform searches by category, by process, by statuses. But now you can see that this drop box has been added here, right? So in the past, whenever you used a keyword in order to execute a search here, so for example, if I'm looking for something related to a vendor in the, I don't know, in the case title, in the past, whenever you used to perform this kind of searches, the search was performed in the case title, the case number, and also in the task title. So now you can select one of these three options, and that's going to help a lot the performance that you have for this kind of actions.
So Giovani, when you use one of these filters, let's say by case number, can you perform a search within that filter?
Yeah, of course. So, for example, if you're working with a specific process like our vendor's registration, you can also perform a search by the task title. I think we don't have too many cases. We actually only have one here. Maybe we can use something like this. There we go. So we're looking, or we're searching for cases related to this process with this specific task title.
Great.
Okay, so as I was telling you, this is most related to the performance that you have for this kind of searches. Perfect. Something really useful for your developers. You know that in the past, all of the trigger errors that you get while executing a process, those kind of error messages used to be logged in the Apache error log. So those were kind of difficult to be found. But now those are included in the ProcessMaker error log. So if you just let me open my file manager here, I can show you how these errors are being logged by ProcessMaker. So for example, I have this error file right here. So this information was already included in previous log files, but now since this is included in the ProcessMaker error log, you will be able to find this kind of information where you can see that a specific trigger related to this specific process in this task, in this case, and that was executed before assigning the next user, and you can even see the unique identifier of the trigger that you would like to review because there's something wrong happening with that trigger. So basically, this is really useful information, most of all for your developers.
Yeah. So this looks like a really nice list of all of the trigger log of all of the times where triggers were executed, and it looks like it starts off with the status code of the trigger execution. So that makes it easy to find if there was an error. You would look for 400 or 401, and you would be able to identify an error right away and read the log for that trigger.
Exactly. And you know that ProcessMaker sometimes is not really explicit in the process debugger, most of all. But sometimes you would like it to be that way, right? You know, you don't want your users to know the queries you're trying to execute or the files you're trying to consult from your triggers.
Exactly. So if there's maybe confidential information that you're sending within the trigger log is actually a great way to prevent end users from seeing that confidential information.
That's right. Okay, so, well, two other features that I would like to show you today are related to new endpoints that we have in ProcessMaker. The first one is related to the processes that you have in your designer interface. So now we have a REST endpoint that will allow you to delete multiple processes at the same time. Maybe we can try it out. I have prepared a couple of ProcessMaker connectors for these examples. But just let me tell you a little bit about the functionality of this new endpoint. And actually, about the usefulness that you have for this endpoint.
So, Giovani, what did you have to do to delete processes in batches before this endpoint?
Okay, so basically we used to have just an endpoint related to the deletion of a single process there. So basically you used to include a kind of a loop structure in order to delete multiple processes, but that also required executing multiple queries to your database. So in order to improve the performance of that kind of actions, now you can use this single endpoint that will allow you to delete multiple processes just executing a single query.
That sounds like it would save me a lot of time if I were a developer. So instead of having to execute single queries all the time, I could just use this endpoint, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what's going to happen here. Okay, so whenever you're trying to use the ProcessMaker REST API, you can always count with our documentation, our great documentation. You know that developers are never alone with ProcessMaker, and its documentation here. So let me just go to our documentation site for a moment, and we're gonna be retrieving some information about the endpoints that we're gonna use here. So maybe in the meanwhile, we can take a look at the ProcessMaker connectors that I'm going to use. So let me go to my PM connectors tab, and let me show you the connectors that I have prepared for today's presentation. Okay, now connectors are, well, we have talked a lot about connectors in past webinars, during training sessions. So this is a really useful feature that will allow you to consume any external REST API services from DocuSign, from external providers like SharePoint, like Google services, like the G Suite applications. So today we're using PM connectors in order to consume the ProcessMaker endpoint. So you can see that I have this one that allows me to get the list of processes from my workspace, right? So maybe we can create a couple of dummy processes here. Maybe one titled process one. I'm going to just quickly create them so we can delete them. Okay, let me create another one called process 2. There we go. Now, let me show you how this connector is configured. So you can see that I'm just executing a GET request to this endpoint right here, which is going to allow me to list the processes that I have for this workspace. And the great thing about ProcessMaker connectors, again, is that you can test them right away. You don't have to wait until your process design is complete. So you can see if they work right here. Okay, so you can see that I'm retrieving all of the information that I have related to the processes that I have here. I had my gateways test. This one was created today, and also process 1 and process 2. So let me just duplicate this tab, and I'm gonna use the information that I have for these processes in order to delete them. So the only thing that I need to know about these processes is this unique identifier, right? So we can see the ProcessMaker connector that has been added to this version. There you go. Okay, so basically you'll be able to see that we're going to use this single endpoint in order to delete our processes, right? Okay, so as I was telling you, you just need to use the unique identifiers in order to delete your processes.
Giovani, what happens when you try to delete a process that has an open case?
Well, you know that ProcessMaker consumes its own endpoint, so it's going to happen the same that happens when you're trying to delete a process that already has some cases related to it. Basically, you will receive an error message telling you that you should first delete those cases before trying to delete those processes.
Okay.
Okay, let me show you just the second endpoint that we have in this version. That one is related to retrieving all of the versions of an input document. So as we did here, we can also use a ProcessMaker connector in order to retrieve our input document list from a specific case. Maybe we can use a case from the examples that we have been showing today. Let me take a look at the cases that we have here. Maybe we can use this one. There you go. So just let me include a company name really quick here. Then include a couple of documents here. I'm going to include this one, and then I'm going to upload a new version for it. Okay, so we're going to be working with this specific case, and I'm going to need to know the unique identifier for that case. So you know that we can easily find that information using the ProcessMaker debugger. So I'm going to enable the debug mode for this process. And this is also something new for this version, right? You can find the unique identifier of the process right away from its properties. So that's going to become really useful for your endpoints and ProcessMaker functions.
Giovani, what did you have to do to find the process UID before it was added in this version?
Well, you used to have several options for that. You could either use the endpoint that I use for listing the processes, for example, or just to execute a database query, or using this PM function that actually also lists the processes that you have for a single workspace.
But this looks really convenient because you can access it directly from the process
Right,
map.
right. You don't depend on a trigger anymore. You just come here, copy and paste it. Okay, so enable the debugging mode here. Let me just save this configuration, go back to the case that I have here. And this is what we're trying to retrieve from this case, right? The application value, which holds the unique identifier for this case. Let me copy this thing.
And just as a note to you guys out there, whenever you see application in ProcessMaker, that means case.
Right, right.
We have a few system variables called app number, app status. Those all are for case number and case status.
Yes, yes, Samuel. That's really useful information, actually. Okay, so let me get the input document list. There we go. You can see that the only thing that we need here is the case identifier, right? So I'm gonna replace this with my case identifier again. So let me test this thing. And there we go. You can see the list of the input documents that I have here. And you can see that I'm also including the different versions that I have for each of them, right? So you can get complete information related to each of your documents. You can see that maybe the most useful information is the link that's going to allow you to access these files and the different versions that you have for them. So those are basically the most important changes that have happened in this version. And you can see that most of them are really useful. I know that there are a lot of bug fixes also included in this version. You can find the complete release notes related to this version in the documentation site of ProcessMaker.
Thank you so much, Giovani, for this demo. It was really informative, so much information, really appreciate. So just before we go to the question and answer session, if you're interested in updating to ProcessMaker 3.2.2, if you have either a private cloud installation or an on-premise installation, you can contact our support team for an assessment. If you have a public cloud installation, you'll be upgraded to 3.2.2 on the release of version 1.3 of the ProcessMaker app. And if you have the community edition of ProcessMaker, you can feel free to take a look at our wiki for instructions on how to upgrade to ProcessMaker 3.2.2. So now I would really like to invite you guys to submit all of your questions using the questions function in GoToWebinars, and we'll go through them one by one and answer them.
Right, that's right. So as Summer was telling you, we're going to give you a couple of minutes. You can always use the questions interface in GoToWebinar, so we're waiting for your questions. Okay, perfect. So thanks again for taking the time for attending this webinar. Let me see the questions that you're asking. Stefano, welcome. Will be available this video later? Yes, we're recording this session and we're gonna publish it on our website. And I'm gonna make sure that all of you receive an email with a link to download the recorded version of this webinar. Wilson is asking us, are those features in the community edition? Well, let me see. I think most of them are included in our community edition. So, for example, the web entry, that's a core feature that's included there. The multiple file uploader is not included in the community version. As I told you before, that's an enterprise feature. But basically, you can go to the ProcessMaker documentation side where you can see clearly the difference between our enterprise edition and our community edition. So you will be able to get the complete list of features that come only with the enterprise edition of ProcessMaker. Okay, let me continue with the rest of your questions. Are you recording this presentation? Yes. Again, as I was telling you, we're going to publish the recorded version of this webinar, and we're going to share that with you via email. Question from Satriana. Satriana, thanks for joining us today. How to combine ProcessMaker with ERP? With an ERP process, so we can see the tasks are already in ERP and also gave notification after process inside ERP has finished. Well, as I was showing you a moment ago, something really useful in order to interact with external systems like ERP systems are our ProcessMaker connectors. So you will just need to execute some REST requests to retrieve information from your ERP system and also to submit information to that system. So you will be able to interact with this kind of systems really flawlessly, actually. We have some questions related to our Dynaforms from Satriana as well. How to do Dynaform styling with CSS3 and support JS frameworks such as jQuery and Node.js. Well, basically our forms are already using jQuery, so that's already there. You just need to call the jQuery functions that you know. Of course, it's always a good practice to first try to use the ProcessMaker helpers that you have in our documentation, and then try to use jQuery functions. And in order to support some functionality like Node.js or having CSS3 for your Dynaform web controls, you can always include external libraries in your Dynaforms. And maybe you can go again to our documentation. Whenever I refer to the ProcessMaker documentation, I talk about it as an encyclopedia because you have all of the information required there. And as I was telling you, you can include external libraries in your Dynaforms.
So let me take over this one for Giovani. Thank you, Ethan, for your question. It reads, how can you see the PHP error log in the cloud version? So as you might already know, our cloud installations are managed by the Cloud Ops team. So you actually do not have access to your own PHP error logs, but you can contact customer support to gain access and look at your PHP error logs. So the reason why we do not allow you free access on cloud installations to see these error logs is for security and performance issues. ProcessMaker manages all of that for you on the cloud installation. So in short, if you want to see the PHP error log, you can feel free to call up customer support and request it.
Great. Thanks, Summer, for taking that one. This is not a question, this is a comment from Jose, who's telling us, very cool. Also, we can see the objects used in the, oh, okay. So I think Jose really liked the process validator. Okay, let me see the next one from Johan. Is the functionality to upload multiple files available right away when you started it in a form? Well, not really. You have to remember that whenever you're trying to upload files to a Dynaform, you need to relate those files to a specific case, right? So you will be able to upload multiple versions of your files whenever you're running a case or whenever you're working with a web entry like we did today. Okay, let me see what else. Do existing processes need to be updated or changed for 3.2.2? Have any PHP functions or SQL tables been changed or moved?
So for the first part of this question, if you call our support team and you have a cloud installation, a private cloud installation of ProcessMaker or an on-premise installation of ProcessMaker, if you call our support team, they're going to help you. They're going to give you an assessment of what you need to do to upgrade your version of ProcessMaker, be it version 3.0 or a different version of ProcessMaker. And then once they give you an assessment that you have all of the requirements to be able to run ProcessMaker 3.2.2, then they'll help you step by step during your upgrade.
Right. Well, that greatly depends on the current version that you're running, right? The current
yes,
ProcessMaker
exactly, and the system you're running ProcessMaker on as well.
Exactly. And in regards to the PHP functions and SQL tables, we always include all the deprecated functionalities and all the database changes for each version that we release. So that information can be found on the release notes for this version, but right away I can tell you that from ProcessMaker 3.1, no functions or tables have been deprecated nor changed in this new version. We have another question from Rodolfo, who's asking, you were talking about a difference between multiple file upload and the file web control. Is there a plan to include the multiple file uploader in the community version? Well, I can tell you, Rodolfo, that the multiple file is an enterprise feature, and it's going to remain as an enterprise feature. But what you can use in the community version of ProcessMaker is the input document that you have related to this kind of fields. So you know that input documents are already included in the community version, and you will be able to use versioning for that kind of process elements there. But as I was telling you, the multiple file uploader is an enterprise feature. Okay, we have a couple of questions here. Is it possible to have a web entry form that is not the start of a process? And that's from Michael. Thanks, Michael, for joining us. Well, basically, the functionality of a web entry is to allow external users to create a case. So basically that should be related to the start of a process. But if you would like your external users to participate, I don't know, right in the middle of the process, you can always use this enterprise feature called Actions by Email. So that feature actually does the same that you can have with a web entry. I mean, providing a public link in order to fill out a Dynaphone. So maybe you can take a look at the documentation that we have for our Actions by Email. Okay, sorry, I think I left you with a blank screen here. Let me just, there we go. Okay. We have another question from Ethan, who's asking, is there a release date for 3.2.2 for cloud customers? What kind of notice will we get about that?
For if you're on a public cloud, what's going to happen is you're going to be upgraded automatically with the release of version 1.3. If you're a private cloud, you can coordinate with ProcessMaker to upgrade whenever you wish to, whenever you're ready, basically.
Great, great. So whenever we do a new version release, we also send email notification to all of our customers and partners so they can start planning the upgrade of their ProcessMaker version. Okay, I have a question from Rashi, who's asking, can we have a fully automated workflow that does not need human intervention at all? Yeah, these kind of tasks are actually part of the BPMN standard. You can either use service tasks or script tasks. And in this kind of task, you will have ProcessMaker actually executing a script, which is going to be basically a trigger, I mean, a portion of a PHP code, or calling an external web service in order to execute this kind of actions. Now, maybe the tricky part of that kind of process design is the start of your process. So basically, you could either use a timer start event, which is going to automatically create cases for you, or you can work with the cron job of ProcessMaker. So that's how I will design a process that doesn't require human intervention at all. Okay, again, we have this question: how do we upgrade to ProcessMaker 3.2.2?
So basically, this question depends on what type of ProcessMaker installation you're using. So like I mentioned before, if you're on a private cloud or on-premise installation and you have the enterprise edition of ProcessMaker, you can contact our support team for first an assessment of the system you're running ProcessMaker on, and then they'll help you, walk you through the process of upgrading ProcessMaker. If you have a public cloud installation, you'll be upgraded to ProcessMaker 3.2.2 when the new version of the ProcessMaker app comes out. And if you have the community edition, then we have detailed instructions on our wiki page for upgrading you to 3.2.2.
Great, and we have the last question here. How difficult is it to set up the community version of ProcessMaker into an Apple computer? Well, even when we don't officially support iOS, for example, well, a lot or many of our developers use Apple computers, so it's not difficult at all. And also, if you're going to use the community version, I mean, you're just trying ProcessMaker, it shouldn't be an issue. And I'm sure that you're going to find a lot of instructions related to this kind of installations in our forum. So as I was telling you, that shouldn't be an issue in order to install ProcessMaker. Okay, well, so I think that's it.
Yeah, it looks like we don't have any more questions. So I would really like to thank you all for attending this webinar. I would like to thank Giovani for, first of all, giving us a great demo on ProcessMaker 322 and answering all of your questions. I hope you guys found this webinar really informative. I hope you all have a great morning, day, or night, and I hopefully we'll see you for our next webinar.
Right. Don't forget to go to our website to sign up for all of our upcoming webinars. We're going to have really interesting webinars, like the one about web entry tool. You're going to review that feature in detail there, and also one about the GDPR compliance one. That's going to be a really interesting webinar.
Yeah, it will. It really will be. We're starting to work on it now. Brandon, 没关系. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you everybody again for you taking the time to attending this webinar today, and we're gonna see you next time.